welcome to our end of session edition of Three Healthcare Headlines You Need to Know from Tallahassee. It's little bittersweet to be joining you today, but I think as everybody in Florida knows, we're going to come back and do a little more of this later this month. So I look forward to chatting with you about that a little bit today. So Joe, you want to do introductions and then flip it back to me, and I'll close and we'll get into the headlines.
Sure. My name's Joe Daraskovich, and I work at several medical associations and societies across the state of Florida. And we really enjoyed getting together on a weekly basis during the legislative session to kind of break down just important things for the healthcare industry and how it's going to affect our physician population here in the state of Florida. So, Frazier, your turn. Tell them who you are and what we're doing.
Yeah, and in my role as executive director of a number of these counties and specialty societies in the state, we're always looking for ways to provide timely and accurate information for our members to engage in the process and to know what may be coming down the pike. So, interested today to kind of put a bow on the regular session that just came to a close last week and touch on some things that our docs need to be aware of moving forward and what might be on the horizon too.
Right. I just want to say I've had some feedback lately. People have been watching our videos, and it's been good. It's been good to hear from mainly up here in Duval County where I live. And so anyway, keep watching and let us know if you need us to touch on anything specific, and we'll try to mention that for you. So as we do each week, we cover three headlines, and it kind of lets you know what the pulse is like over there in Tallahassee. So you ready to jump right in, Frazier?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, number one this week. Rural Renaissance bill kicked down the highway as legislators prepare for overtime. Oh boy, overtime, Frazier. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a couple of weeks now, and as we predicted, or as was widely predicted, not just from us, but from everybody that was paying attention, the legislature did fail to come to an agreement on a budget. So what they decided to do, rather than trying to stay over like an extra day, they decided to just let everybody leave town and let's come back in a few weeks and take care of the budget business. So that's what they decided to do. They have reached, from what we understand, top line agreement as far as the amount of money both chambers are willing to spend. And as we talked about last week, when they come back to Tallahassee, they're going to actually dive deeper and figure out on all those specific budget items, how much each chamber wants to spend on that. Since they are coming back, there's only a procedurally they had to name every bill that could still be on the table when they do return to Tallahassee in addition to the budget. So they have listed 16 actual bills that can be debated, and that will create the framework for the add-on session, if you will. So one of those bills is the Rural Renaissance Bill. We've talked about that. It's a Senate President's priority. As you'll recall, the House tried to muddy the waters a little bit with his priority by putting other bills in and splitting that Rural Renaissance Bill into like three different legislative packages. So anyway, because they couldn't come to a final agreement on that, that's been thrown into special session. And we highlight that because there were a few healthcare issues that the House tried to tag on that Renaissance bill. And the Renaissance bill itself did have some healthcare initiatives as well, as far as opening up care in the rural communities. So it's worth watching. Our work is not done here, Joe. We're going to be coming back and doing more of these podcasts through the month of May, just to make sure we're paying attention to what's being debated over there.
Yeah, and we talked, as you said, we weren't the only ones who predicted this was going to happen, and but we've been talking about the likelihood of this for a while. How rare is this? I mean, is this something that you kind of need to have in the back of your mind when session starts that this could happen? If things go that direction.
Extensions are common, but usually just a day or two. And when they struggle to come to agreement, often they'll just extend into Saturday and get it done. But it's rare to be this far apart that last week of session where they decided, let's just go home, take a breath and come back later on in May to get the work done. So it is pretty rare. And if it goes like regular session, there's still a long way to go for them to come to agreement on all the nitty gritty that's down in the budget for sure.
Yeah, and we have touched on how dramatic, I guess you could say, this session has been between both sides of the aisle and the governor's office and everybody kind of negotiating, I guess you could say. So we'll keep everybody in the loop. Any more thoughts on before we move on?
Yeah, the only other thought is, of course, now the legislature has passed a number of bills and they've concluded session. Those bills have to be sent to the governor at a certain time, and that starts the clock for when the governor signs these things into law. Since they will be coming back to Tallahassee, there's still some work that needs to be done. I'm not sure if that impacts the time frame of when the legislature starts sending bills to the governor, or if they wait. So, because there can be some gamesmanship, some timing issues go around that when they want to put the governor on the clock to sign a bill or not. So it's worth watching and how this kind of halftime, if you will, a session impacts the timing of when bills are sent over to the governor's desk. So worth watching that as well.
Wow, the drama never ends. It's just always something to watch over there in Tallahassee. So I don't know. It was kind of you have the calendar at the beginning of the session, and you kind of you know when it's going to end. But I'm excited. I'm excited to have more to talk about, and I always love chatting with you, Fraser.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's move on. Now we know what's going on. We know about the overtime and everything. Let's go on to our second headline. I know this is something that people are going to be wanting to learn about as we give the update here. So, number two, after late drama, legislators send clean wrongful death bill to the governor. Okay, what's the latest with the wrongful death bill, Frazier?
Yeah, so we talked about that bill for all of session, and in fact, even leading up to session, we knew it was a huge potential that the legislature would put forward a bill that would repeal, the current prohibition on adult children and parents of adult children suing for non-economic damages in wrongful death cases here in Florida. What we didn't know is if it would make it through the entire process clean, meaning just a clean repeal without any other countermeasure being added that would protect kind of downstream impacts on physicians as far as insurance costs for med-mal. There was some late drama. There was a couple amendments offered, over on the Senate side to put caps on damages onto a bill. The bill sponsor actually put forward an amendment to do that. They came one vote away from being added to the bill. Ultimately, they tabled the bill and then brought it back the next day clean and voted it out. So still a lot of drama associated with that legislation. And now it's passed both chambers. It is ready to be sent to the governor. As I teased on our last question, the timing of when that gets sent is worth watching as well. It has not been sent yet. We will let everybody know when it has been sent, and that's when the clock starts on what how long the governor has to sign it. He's got 14 days to either sign the bill, veto the bill, or let it become law without his signature. So we'll see kind of how he reacts to that and the ongoing discussions that have been happening between the chambers around where the state wants to be as far as our liability climate and whether he thinks this is a good idea or a bad idea and sends it back to him. I will say the final clean bill passed overwhelmingly both chambers. So there's a lot of support for repealing this in the legislature. So it does even raise the question of whether we're talking down the road about vetoes and overrides and all that other stuff too. So I hate to keep using the word drama, but we might as well, because there's a lot to. We're not just trying to build our audience here, Joe. There truly is intrigue in what's going to happen here over the coming weeks.
Well, and sometimes you flip through your thesaurus and try to, get fancy with things, but I think drama covers what's going on over there in Tallahassee. It's, one thing I want to say is one vote. Every time you hear about one vote being the difference in something, it's just a good reminder that the outreach that we do is so important. Making sure that we're connecting with the lawmakers when we can, and making sure that our voices are heard as much as possible, because some of these things are, razor sharp as far as, passing or not making it to the next committee and things like that. So it's a good reminder to stay on top of things as far as reach out goes.
Absolutely.
All right, you ready for the third headline of the day?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, number three. Many healthcare bills fail to advance, but several require physical attention. What does that mean?
And there was probably a typo. It's supposed to be physician attention. So I messed up the last headline of the year. There you go.
It
And I
could have been
did.
could have been you, could have been me. I don't know. I don't know.
The audience will never know. We both
Yeah,
take credit. We both take blame, I should say. Um,
right.
and this one, I took the liberties of being co-host to expand this a little bit, just to touch on those bills that have passed. There was, what, 25 something bills, healthcare bills, that we got a report from our lobbyists about that did pass and are ready to be sent to the governor. There's four in particular that caught my eye that just wanted to make sure our audience is aware of, and they flag for further investigation. It's I say that because for all these bills, the statutory language is one thing. Once they get signed into law by the governor and their effective date, then the regulatory agencies have to implement them as well. So oftentimes with some of these bills, there's nuances on how they're implemented by the regulatory authorities that then have to put them into play. So for all of these things, there often is clarification that we need, which will come down the line from various agencies, state agencies, as they go to implement these bills. One of them is the refunds in overpayments made by patients. It's a bill that has passed that requires physicians to provide a refund to patients that overpay within 30 days of the office realizing there was an overpayment made. And oftentimes that comes with the complexities of medical care and not knowing, what to charge on the front end, what's ultimately going to get paid by the insurer, what the allowable was, all that kind of stuff. So the bill does make it pretty clear that refunds need to be paid within 30 days of the practice determining that an overpayment was truly made. The question is, could you do refunds, rebates? Could you put it on their client account, patient account, if you will? Does that qualify as a refund? All of that needs to be worked out with the agency. The penalty on this ultimately is a fine. From the Agency for Healthcare Administration. So, again, something the docs want to pay attention to. There'll be more clarity provided by the agency if and when it gets implemented. So something for us to look out for there. Treatment of blood clots, that's primarily a hospital and ambulatory surgery center issue, but for those of us that have that do practice in those facilities, which is quite a lot of our physicians, obviously, there's some new requirements around screening and following evidence-based practice guidelines for identifying patients that are at risk for blood clots. There's also some training requirements that those hospitals will have educational requirements that those facilities will have to do for their non-clinical staff to make sure everybody is on board with the kind of the dangers and their protocols that they have in place for addressing patients that are at risk for blood clots. There's also an ECG requirement for student athletes that will be implemented over time, where our student athletes are going to have to get an ECG to make sure we identify any heart conditions they may have before they participate in athletics. So that's going to kind of go through the Florida High School Athletic Association with some guidance for implementation. But for those of our docs in primary care, cardiology, sports medicine, need to look out for that legislation as well. And finally, the fluoride ban, the statewide ban on adding fluoride to the water, did pass. It's likely to be signed in the governor. I know some of our members have been tracking that, but just wanted to remind folks that that was another bill that did pass, and ultimately, if signed, we will have a statewide ban on communities adding fluoride to the water. So we'll have to monitor downstream, for lack of a better word, what happens there, but we'll see what goes. But those were kind of four bills that kind of jumped out. I want to make sure I reference since we've been talking about them at some point throughout session.
Yeah, no, and those were all very important. What talking about cardiologists, talking about obviously we had that the call a few weeks ago where everyone was kind of worried about what was going to happen with that fluoride bill and everything. So yeah, I know we had three headlines, but we covered a lot of a lot of territory on this
We did.
episode here. But important, we didn't want to leave anything out, and we do that. We do the three headlines to kind of keep it brief, but sometimes you have to take a deep dive and kind of dig a little deeper. So what are your thoughts? I mean, yeah, what are you thinking here, where we stand right now?
Yeah, tying a bow on it, I didn't mention like scope of practice bills that passed. So I know many of our members are concerned with scope creep. None of those bills passed. There was a lot we talked about that we had concerns with that so far have not passed as we come to the conclusion of this year's session. And we wait to see what the rest of the month holds. But at this point, I think we'll look back at it saying it was mostly a status quo year for most things other than that wrongful death bill, and what might happen in the weeks ahead with the rural renaissance bill. So definitely we're at a relatively comfortable spot, if you will, but have an eye on what happens in the next few weeks up there.
Okay. All right. Well, it's good and bad. We get to see each other again. As this session kind of plays out a little bit more. So you ready for the our final moment of the day here?
Yeah, I need a parting song for
Okay.
this wrap up session. Yes.
Yeah, and last week I actually did have a comment last week. Dr. Alyssa from Jacksonville appreciated our musical tip last week, and I've been tapping my toes. I was doing a lot of yard work, and I played that song over and over. That last week's song was sort of a smaller band that I got to see at a local venue before they got so big. And today's band, well, I'm gonna do something special. I didn't even run this by you, Fraser, but anyone who knows me really well knows my favorite concert of last year. You know, I got a lot of live music shows and everything. And the band that I'm about to say, they're world famous, but the name of this band is a little out there. So I'll say the name of the band, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do with these guys. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. So it's kind of an unorthodox name, but they're versatile. So here's what I'm going to do, Fraser. For instance, how of their versatility, they've released 6 albums in 1 year. I think they've released like 24 albums over 12 years, kind of thing. So they're very versatile, as I say. So because we're going a little deeper into session, and it's hard to pick just one, I'm going to pick a different King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard song every week of this special session. And I'm going to try to pick a different genre. So this week is Fishing for Fishies. And I don't want you, you know, a lot of times I say, hey, listen to a lot more music by this band. I want the people to listen to that song, and then next week come back and hear what my next pick is going to be, because it's going to be wildly different. So that's the thing about this band, is this one's sort of a children's song. Then there's more of a techno song, and then there's a heavy metal song. So I think it'll be fun for the viewers to kind of play along with this one.
Nice. I like that tease. Keep them coming back in the coming weeks to hear the
Right,
next song recommendation. I
exactly.
like it.
But this one's Fishing for Fishies, and it's a real it's a family friendly song. You can play it as you're putting the kids down for bed at night, or you know, as you're waking up in the morning. I can't say the same for all their other songs, but this will whet everyone's appetite for the special session.
I like it. Well, and look for announcements with us coming back here live once we figure out the calendar for the coming weeks. We'll get together, Joe, and figure out when we're going to do our next podcast. But appreciate everybody following us along all session. We appreciate all of the support that we've received, all the outreach that you guys have done to legislators. It really does make a huge difference, and it's been a lot of fun getting together with you weekly, Joe.
Yep, and we'll like you said, we'll keep an eye on the schedule, and look for our emails, look for our social media posts, and leave comments below. We'll try to touch on the topics that matter most to the physicians across Florida. So, Frazier, until next time.
Yep. Take care.